my name is Pilam Faba. I was born in the Eastern Cape, but spent most of my time in Joburg, in Soweto. Still go back home December times and big holidays and events like that. I studied at Pukulane Secondary School in Soweto. Then from there I went to Rose University, where I did my first degree in BA, majoring in Xhosa and psychology. Then after that, I took a PGCE, and my majors there was Xhosa, history, and geography. When I came to Eastern Cape, I registered with UNISA to do my psychology honors, and my recent qualification is with Stellenbosch in business administration diploma. And currently, I'm a teacher at One Big Boys Junior School. I teach Xhosa from grade 1 to 7 and history for grade 7s.
Okay. How did you end up being a Xhosa teacher?
Let me just take you back from being a teacher per se. So I went to public school, obviously, so we were not really exposed to careers per se. It's teacher, doctor, and those few careers that we know about, and feel like something that people take for granted to grow up in affluent places. It was kind of difficult for me to narrow down what exactly I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a lawyer, I didn't want to be a doctor, and all of those common careers. Then I was stuck, but I didn't think much about it. I think I was doing grade 10, and then it was towards the end of the year examination, and we were studying with my classmates. So I stand up to explain something to them, and then the feedback I got was really reinforcement for me, and people were happy. There was things like, you explained better than Miss so and so and so. I just love the feeling of taking people from being blank, doesn't know anything, to now you've brought a light to this concept. Then I kept doing that from grade 10, 11, and then I realized I feel like I can do explain, and I can see the feedback. It's getting good as the year goes, and that's how I ended up teaching. And obviously, Xhosa was one of the things that I was good at, and I remember during the 10 and 12, a lot of students struggle with the mashelo, just to know what is Shelo 1A to Shelo 12. I got it, and then I was able to explain them in a way that people who didn't get it in grade 8 and 9 by now 10 is like, oh, that makes sense. And I realized that there's a strength in me teaching Xhosa. Loved history because of my history teacher also in high school, and geography as well. So when I did my PGC, I majored in 3, and then when I applied, obviously I was applying for everything within that category. Probably I was very lucky when I was applying in 2019. I've got an offer in Kayamnandi in somewhere in Western Cape. It was a geography history post. I got a post also in Emonti. It was also a history and Xhosa post, and then I got a post again in when the boys was only Xhosa, and then I decided to go for that. And it's because the reason why I went for that Xhosa only, I felt like because it's a predominantly white school, or I'm not sure if white is a word, but it doesn't have a lot of Africans and African languages there. So I feel like that's where I can make a lot of change, And I love the fact that as much as they realize that they are predominantly white, but they are willing to accept other African languages as part of the curriculum. So I feel like this is where I will make a drastic change compared to the other two posts. So in order to be a teacher, obviously you need to take the subjects that you're going to teach. Starting from high school, you're not going to just pick up the subject from a university level. So they have to start from high school, and then the process continues. You take the same subjects in the university, and then you're going to specialize between 2 and 3. My path was a PGCE path, and I have to already just people have to be careful that this has been phased out by a lot of universities. So they want teachers to start from first year, because they feel like that 1 year of preparing you to be a teacher is not enough for teachers to be qualified good enough. So if you want to, let me start just from an advice first. If you do want to teach, it's something that you have to start from first year. Don't take the degree and then after that and say, oh, by the way, I want to study. You might end up starting from scratch from the first year, because PGC is no longer a thing. It's been phased out. So I was fortunate enough that when I got that year, it was probably second of last year that they were doing it. But it's been really phased out. So make that decision that you do want to be a teacher and take the subjects that you enjoy teaching, both in university level, obviously, and in both in high school and in university. So I did that. I took the subjects in university because I was PhD, so I started the degree, a degree. I had Xhosa, I had Xhosa, I had geography, and those became my 3 majors. And then I took that 1 year of PhD, and that made me to be a qualified teacher. Obviously, if you're starting now, going forward, you have to start your BEd from first year. Just get your subjects right in high school if you're going through that path. That's the other thing you have to get right is the expectations of being a teacher. It's more of I know there's a career path in it, but I think also it's something of a calling. It's not a place where you will think of making money. It's not a place where you will think of progressive. You can obviously progress, but there are very few spaces. It is for someone who says, I want to give back to the community, I want to help out. If that's your first thing about teaching, that is more of a community service, yes, you get compensated because there are expenses you need to pay, then you are in the right path. But don't think in a way that I want to scale, I want to move from point A to point B like an corporate. That's you're gonna get disappointed as you get to the system. Don't think too much about money. That when I start working, I will have money. And I think I've seen a lot of people falling back to education because they can't get into where they need to go because maybe the marks were low or you are not confident enough to get there, whatever the case might be. And you think, well, as long as I'm getting paid, yes, we're gonna get paid, and yes, we're gonna do the teaching, but the expense are very too high because you're not gonna love what you're doing, and if you don't love teaching, if you don't love education, it's gonna mess with your mental health, and that's very important. So if you always been that person that enjoys to stand in front of people and explain to them things and understand the concept, and you feel like that's where the joy comes in as part of the job, and then that's it for you. But if there's any other factors that drives you towards teaching, you might really struggle to go forward. Also, before I became a teacher, being a learner and seeing your teachers teach is a really different picture when you come and stand there. There are other hidden things as being a teacher that you don't kind of see up until you stand in front of the kids and start teaching. The control that teachers have over students have become much less and less and lesser as time goes. The people have become much softer, rules are changing and all of that. So you don't have really much of a freedom to teach as you please. You've got so many policies that hinder your own way of teaching. So just be ready for that you might have your idea of what it means to run a classroom or what it means to move a kid from A to B. And in a way, you're going to be restricted by the laws. And you'll see as you go like, oh, I thought there was this flexibility of doing 1, 2, and 3. I mean, times have changed. You see people who taught us having that much freedom, we can do 1, 2, and 3 experiment, but you come and teach, you realize that we are much restricted as time goes. So there will be that change that we have to expect from what you see as a learner to what you be as a teacher, but it's a learning curve. So it's something that you wouldn't know up until you start teaching.
But you and Pilar, don't you think that is influenced by the fact that you went to a public school, but then the school that you are teaching at is different? Obviously, the policies might be different. The culture is going to be different compared to the school that you are used to.
Oh, yes, yeah. Maybe you have to be sure which kind of school you need to go to. Yes, exactly. So the other thing I'm saying that where is your calling taking you? What change you want? Also, you need to be I've seen a lot of teachers, maybe myself included, say, I want to make a change. You just need to be very specific about what change you want to make. Okay, I know with my changes has to do with languages. I want to make sure that the African languages are being taught, are part of the curriculum, just to create this multilingualism, especially within the places where it's not necessarily practiced, right? To say, I want to see someone who knows nothing about Xhosa to be able to create and create back and say, a few words obviously won't be fluent, but they can be able to convince it to some level. That was my goal as far as education is concerned. So you just have to identify what change you want. You have to be specific, because if you're specific about what change you want to make in teaching, and then in that way you will know exactly where you need to apply and which school you need to teach and what you need to do and all of that.
Okay, speaking of taking someone from not knowing isiXhosa to being able to read and say basic sentences in isiXhosa, can you tell us exactly what is it? What are some of those basic things that you teach to your students? Like any fun tips you have?
Okay, so we teaching isiXhosa as a second additional language. Okay, so it means we talking to mostly kids who have never came across the language one, and they don't speak the language at home. They are not really familiar with the language, so we have to start at a very basic, as basic as saying molo, hello, which is the first thing. It might be the first time they hear the word molo, especially if they're the younger grade. So you really have to put yourself in their shoes when you teach. Obviously, you know the language and you understand exactly how it works. So just make sure that your expectations are aligned with what you're gonna teach them. And it's a language. So language is a skill. It's like a motor skill. It only gets better with practice. So a patient is something that you need to have, because you might teach it today and then they might not know it tomorrow, or that it takes time for them to get it because they have to always use it. And remember, they only use it in class. In my context, they leave the school, it's out, they back to English or Afrikaans at home, then they come back the next period and now they're back to it again. So there's that rhythm that you need to put. So if you said after, you can't put a syllabus as if you're doing a science syllabus. We learn this, tick, let's move to the next thing, tick. It doesn't work like that. We say we learn this, do we now know it? Yes. Are we confident? Yes. And then you move to the next one. And I feel what works for my teaching style is the fact that there will be that transition. So if you teach them to say molo, then don't skip and teach them how to say I'm going to the bus stop. Just make sure that you align with things so that it just kind of makes molo, and then Winchani, how are you? Dipilile, and all of that put in the same category, and they know this is greeting starts from here to goodbye, from hello to goodbye, and then you categorize that in one pot. So you can't be everywhere, because now it in their mind it kind of becomes, it looks like it's too much. You're just building, like you're building a thing, putting a brick on top of another brick. And remember, it's teaching language is not a syllabus. It's just making people understand that there's no text box. It's just we know it, and you always have to visit back, always come back to that topic, and always just last thing, understand that learning language is different from one person to another. So you need to kind of diversify how you teach. One learner will be good to listen to you as you speak, they will get it. One learner will want you to write it down and they read it. One learner will want pictures with it and they get it. So you need to kind of bring that diverse kind of teaching into a classroom to accommodate all the learning styles of learners.
Nice. Or speaking, I'm gonna come from the topic that you introduced, whereby you're saying some kids, they only learn isiXhosa in the class, and then by the time they get out the door, they don't know what you taught. So do you have any advice for parents who have whose kids are doing isiXhosa as a second language? Do you have any advice in terms of what they could do to help their kids to practice isiXhosa more? Are there any apps that you know of, or any materials that they can maybe make use of?
I mean, honestly, African languages, the development in terms of technology is a bit low, so it's a bit difficult to find something that is going to assist the kids. But I mean, if you take the work that the kids do in class, and then you go and practice that at home, that's much better. And there's a thing about using outside technology. It's a fact that it has to really align to the curriculum of the school. So it would be pointless for a teacher, for my sake, to have a curriculum and suggest a source outside which doesn't align to what we are teaching. So the kids end up being everywhere. Again, there's that consistent that we need to maintain. So if, for example, I'm teaching this topic, I have to make sure that whatever software or technology we find is aligned to what I teach. It becomes a bit of a challenge. I will say this age and time, what the teacher teaches, the worksheets, whatever they're recording, whatever the case might be, those becomes one of the things that the kids might need to use to prepare. Some of the things we do is the kids that are strong and that they get the language very quick, they make videos, put those videos on Google Classroom, and then the others will listen to them and see how the things are done. Especially when it comes to assessments, we normally move to do assessments online. And one reason for that is so that the kids can get the support from home instead of doing it in class. Also about nerves, kids get nervous in front of others to present, especially a foreign language. So we say, go do it at home, go practice. You have more time to practice, you have resources. And what I do is the kids that are strong in the language, they go first, and then I get the permission to put their example of whatever the kids might be online before the deadline for other kids. So you kind of work it around with your curriculum, and then send that online Google Classroom to parents to play around it.
What's the most fulfilling part about your job?
I think when you, as I've said, that I meet these kids when they probably know 0% of his thoughts, and toward the end of the year, they can really make sentences, they can create, they can say goodbye, and sometimes the great ones are very cute, because once they've learned that in about a month and they saw in the corridor, they just run to you, and then you see that this is you have done that, you've seen the change that you've made from these kids from point A to point B. And as I've mentioned before, that was one of the reasons why this job was appealing to me. So because of like this absolutely nothing here, and I have an opportunity to build something. And when I see that people moving from zero to something, and they came without knowing anything, and now they can make sentences, it really makes me smile.
Yeah. Was there a Xhosa teacher there before you, like at your current?
Yes, so I think I'm the third one in since they've introduced the Xhosa. First one, she was very short. Both this first and second were very short. They didn't stay long. So yeah, there were two before me.
Did you have to? I'm gonna also talk about my partner, because I once had it. Even though it lasted 2 weeks, I had a job teaching Xhosa, and there was no curriculum, nothing for me to use. I had to come up with my own songs. We were mostly doing songs. Basically, I had to write up my own curriculum. So when did you have to do the same thing,
Yes.
or was
Yes.
Is it?
So there was absolutely nothing. So they say fill it and go as you want, which was fine for me, because obviously the first thing you have to understand before you teach, you have to understand the understanding where are the kids. So I realized that it's zero. So I was able to do that. The challenge is how to differentiate a curriculum from grade 1 and 2, 3 and 4. It's 1 in difference. So the challenge was the intensity. How deep do I go from 1 to 2 to 3? How do I make that difference? But you play with it. You first term you see it doesn't go well, and then you try something second term, and up until you get your rhythm right. But yeah, there was no curriculum.
But you're teaching grade 1?
1 to 7.
1, 2. Ooh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
How do you even have enough time to do that? Maybe you don't go to other classes.
It's 30 minutes a period over the week. So that's it.
So in a day, how many classes do you do?
Let me see. So the periods one I really can't think, but I do get about 1 hour free a day, excluding lunch.
But do you? I think my question is, do you get to all the grades in one day or in 1 week? Or how do you do it?
They're everywhere. They're everywhere, because you have to accommodate other subjects, so they're everywhere. So I can say 1A and 2B and 3C and 7C, and then I still have to do history at the same time. So
that's a lot. Oh, you teach history as well?
Yeah.
Do you teach songs? I think I'm more interested on the language side of things in terms of teaching. When you're doing teaching grade 1, do you teach songs, or like what's the strategy of teaching?
No, not songs. Just conversation.
Why are you happy as judges?
No, I'm not a good singer.
No, you don't have to sing as such, like zero station, they call them, because in my experience, from what, obviously I'm not a teacher, but from what I know, younger kids learn better by if you sing the stuff. So, and even us, when we were learning Xhosa growing up, we had the station that we used to sing. So I was assuming that if you're teaching grade 1 language, you should have
something
songs.
I'll look into, but now I bit.
So how do you just speak and explain?
Yeah, we just speak and explain, put some cartoons, words next to them, and all of that. When they learn quickly, you'll be surprised how quickly they grasp the information. It gets in. I feel like more than the senior phase, the foundation phase, it comes natural. So I really advocate for people to go for African languages. For one, there's a scarcity for teachers in that field specifically, and secondly, the African languages really need attention, because there's a very little promotion, and I think the lack comes from the education part of it. Very less people are putting up their hand to to teach African languages as a result. It's not commonly practiced. I was speaking to someone and they say if you go to places like I don't know, Netherlands, English is they speak their own African languages, their own indigenous languages. Other countries, we're the only country that have to adapt to English. As a result, African languages now are overlooked because there's an opportunity for African languages to become a dominant language, for example, to be used in a workplace where they say, if you don't know Xhosa, you can't work here. And if that happens, it forces people to really learn the African languages for one. But the shortage comes from the fact that we don't have people who are willing to teach African languages. And there's probably the prestige. People prefer to teach science because it looks a bit more advanced than teaching African languages. But I think the value you put in teaching African languages more recognized than in other subjects at this time and point. So, but just be aware that if you do that, you are coming to a kind of a very new field. It's not something that is very exposed. So you're going to have to be creative in terms of how you teach it because you don't have a lot of resources available for you. Probably don't have a lot of help coming from your side. For example, I'm the only Xhosa teacher in the school, so I don't go to any colleague to ask about anything. I don't have a lot of resources to depend on. So you have to kind of have that creativity, that patience, and be able to connect to other people from far away. So you just be ready for those challenges. But if you just get the rhythm and you love what you're doing, it should be fun. I think there's a room for schools and universities to accommodate the African languages, and I think for one, especially it I'm looking for a word to put it. There are schools that have introduced African languages, or depending on the province, but it's done in a way that they can say we have it, and so we are complying to the law. But there's a very little genuine to it. Like they really believe that it should be there and it's important. You'll find that they just put it there as to say we are inclusive. Look, we teach in Xhosa, but we really need to get to a point where there's a passion in introducing it and there's investment going towards the African languages, not just to do it as a matter of ticking the box and say we comply with whatever the government wants or something like that. So in the future, I feel like it can be bigger if there's someone somewhere, maybe from higher education, who's very passionate about African languages, so that they enforce that they get taught and they give resources and they give more than much. How is it justified that you have one teacher in a whole school teaching a language? Because English teachers every grade, African teachers every grade. Why another language which we think is the same level as the two must have one teacher? Those are the things that we have to question to say it should be treated in the same level as English and as Xhosa. And that's how languages grow. They grow from being taught and being enforced. It's very difficult to get still behind, but if there's that consistency and there's that passion and that push for it to be learned, people have no choice but to learn it. And at some point, we get people who are fluent in Xhosa getting opportunities in jobs, for example, because if you were to be interviewed now for a job, it must be in English, and it's your second language. Who are your competitors? Someone who grew up learning English, not only learning English, but learned it in a good school. So why can't we have the same advantage where we can go to interviews, we can write CVs in Xhosa, in the language that we grew up with, so that we know that language now is no longer a barrier between choosing person A and person B. It's now about skills. So we really need to put indigenous language at the same level as English, because it really affects most of the people, or most of the English speakers, when it comes to workplace, when it comes to communication, a lot of things. I mean, everywhere you go, you have to explain yourself in English. You go to court, it must be English. You go to shows, it must be English. You get stopped by a traffic cop, must speak English. It's just everywhere, and it doesn't give people too much right to express themselves as they want. You go to write exams, it's English. I mean, almost everything. You have about how many? 7 subjects in high school, for example. Only 1 in Xhosa, the other 6 is English. And then you wonder why it's difficult for black people to progress, to get good jobs. It's because they've been marginalized by African languages not being in the same level as English. So I think that push is very important.
I wonder, those if there's a difference between private schools that are predominantly white, like there's white kids, or and then there's other schools that are predominantly like black kids. There's no other way to put it. And I know there's a program that has been introduced whereby kids are being, let me say, maybe you're based in Eastern Cape, you have an opportunity or a choice to learn in Xhosa somehow. I'm not sure how deep it is, but I recently saw an article of a kid, exams in Xhosa, whatever. But there's no opportunity for people to learn in their languages. I think it happens at black schools. I'm just going to put it like that. But it doesn't happen, obviously, at white schools because it's not their mother tongue. So,
no, but the problem with that is if it ends within the constitution, if it's that school or that district, but the whole nation works in English, it doesn't help them. So you get to write everything in Xhosa that time, then go and apply. Where you're going to apply with your Xhosa, who's going to listen to you speaking your Xhosa. There's no company that's ever opened the policy and say, look, come with your own language, you're going to interview, we're going to get people who are going to listen to your Xhosa in this interview. It has never happened. We have to write a CV in English and you have to make sure the spelling is good, the grammar is good, because if you do something wrong, your CV is going to be thrown in a bin. It's English. So if that happens in a smaller scale within a school context, let it be nationalized. I know I'm comfortable in Xhosa, I'm going to learn it, I'm going to learn everything in Xhosa. Then let me go on to university in the same language. Let me go on to the workplace with the same language. Because that's exactly what happened to English people, the white people. They go on to primary school, high school, varsity, to workplace. It's just English. They don't have to worry about language anymore. Once you get a language, you get it. It's no longer an issue. So we have to, before we can understand the skills associated with the job, we first need to get the language right. Now we have two challenges. If you don't, sometimes some people don't have language, but they have skills. You get there, you're messing up your language, your English, because they're not used to it. It's not your home language, and you didn't maybe get good education in primary school, for example, or high school, and outside of the school, you only speak Xhosa. You see, that affects your opportunity of getting a job. It starts even from a CV. You make small mistakes, your CV goes to the bin. So if it happens in a smaller scale, let it go just right through. So it's not fair for me to learn Xhosa in high school or university and then come to a place I'm not employable.
It's not gonna help you in any way.
It doesn't help in any way unless there's a push that we are seeing now. I'm not saying only Xhosa, I'm just saying all indigenous language. I mean, it can be by province. We know in the Western Cape, for example, that English, Afrikaans, and Xhosa are dominant. We can't deny. Eastern Cape, you go the same. English, Xhosa, Afrikaans are dominant. We don't have to take Xhosa and put it in
KZN.
In KZN, for example. We don't have to do that. We don't say all 9 of them. We just say the ones that dominate in that province. Let's accommodate those. Western Cape just need to improve Xhosa, that's it. Eastern Cape need to improve Xhosa, KZN needs to improve Zulu. Just focus on one language in province, and all of us in no time will be a really actual multilingual country that accommodates everyone across all sectors. I mean, look at the science. How still have science all over the country still in English? Yes, there are places that try to put Xhosa there and there, but in most cases it's just simply English. You take your driver's license, it's in English. What is it? What is it that you will do and say, oh, I can do this in Xhosa? Nothing. Even the simple thing as driver's license is in English. Everything.
So now, what you are saying, when I feel like at the same time, it's almost as if you're not that you're discouraging them, but I can see your point. Is like, what is the point? Because remember, by the way, when I was doing my honors, my thesis was about how we should translate textbooks and other things so that they can be in African Xhosa or African languages so that kids can use them. So now what you're saying is that what is the point of all that research we're doing, Joy? Because those kids that we're talking about, they're going to learn Xhosa, let's say at varsity. I mean, they're going to have resources, things to read in Xhosa, but then when they go to the outside world, that is not going to work for them. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, certainly yes, because it unless certainly it is exactly. I mean, you are doing your part, which is good. Someone else has to do their part to make sure that it's a teamwork. So you do your part, great, you translate these things, but they need to be practical in the real world. And someone there is failing to make these changes. Someone there is not pushing for this to be. I mean, you can bring the materials. I mean, there are a lot of people who are willing to translate and to promote this, but there's someone on top who don't see the need for those languages to just go and translate. But it's a certain reality because some people are really working hard to make their resources available, but they are not usable in a real world context, unfortunately. I mean, imagine, let's take a simple example, let's translating question papers in learners. I'm making an example. And then you go and write your learners, speak to English.
Yeah.
We know, even if we know the answers, that's the simple example I can make, that we can do the translation in a smaller scale. Now let's go and put that in practice. If they don't, the traffic department, for example, and say, hey, by the way, University A, B, and C have found a way to translate the question to say Xhosa to accommodate the kids. Put them those in the traffic department. Just that's all we do. You take things that are already translated and certify it and say this is good, is proper. Ask the learners what language they want. And then if they say one Xhosa, we give them the paper in Xhosa. But if now we have that within, there's another trick I have with academics. Sometimes what we research and do stay within the academics, it doesn't get to the public that needs it.
Dude, I've been thinking about
We
this.
read and translate and reference it. It doesn't
Oh
really
my
get to the
goodness.
real world.
What, like that? I've been thinking about that because as soon as you get, now that we're in the real world, we're working in different industries. I work in the translation sector, obviously. I realized that a lot of the stuff that I learned, yes, they were useful and yes, they made me who I am, but most of them, if I can just say, they were mostly theory. They didn't prepare me for the real world, for the actual practical things I have to face.
They say so someone has to push. Someone has to push.
Yeah. But anyway, that's from the research, because for anything, for the policies to be implemented and whatnot, someone has to do the research and suggest, and then it can be implemented at a larger scale.
My blog is mostly about personal development, which I feel like it was, firstly I was doing it for my own sake because the work was hard. Moving to Cape Town, I was lonely, and I was really struggling emotionally, and I thought, let me just kind of see how I can struggle, and then I kind of get very good things, and I feel like, oh, people should know about these things, and then I started to write them down and things. So it's all about personal development, bit of financial advice for people who want to start their high side business like that. So that's what my blog is all about.
Okay, it is called Blog with Pillar.
Blog with Pillar. Yes.
I'll put the link.